Does anybody love him? Come on, lift your hands. Does anybody love him? Come on, church. Does anybody love him? Oh, I love him. I love the Lord.
This is where the community is connected. 980 AM WDDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
Macon in Middle Georgia. It's time for Village Talks with Tia and LJ. Join them live every Wednesday from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. right here on the Glory 107.9 FM, 980 AM WDDO. Log on to the Glory 107.9 FM on Facebook or YouTube to become a part of the conversation. Let's go live into the studio for Village Talks with Tia and LJ.
Is your child struggling with reading, writing, learning loss, and a culturally irrelevant curriculum? Do you want your child to be outstanding at reading and writing and also take pride in their culture? Then you want Reading Revolution Online. Reading Revolution Online is a web-based reading support program. We serve scholars in grades K through 8, and through our innovative approach, we help them build reading confidence and cultural identity development, equipping them for success in school and life. They learn about Black heroes and sheroes through captioned videos, reading selections, and other activities. Reading Revolution Online is an experience for the whole family. Do it for the culture. Go to readingrevolution.org and get your membership today.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
How y'all doing out there today? Welcome to Village Talks. We are Making the Middle Georgia's freshest radio show and Godcast, bringing you conversations centered around culture and community from right here in the 478 and beyond. I am your co-host, LJ. And to the left is the dynamic, extraordinary, phenomenal, so beautiful, so lovely.
Mm-hmm. Keep it PG for the people.
Passionate, blunt.
Tia, peace and blessings, good people. How y'all doing out there?
Yes, I'm feeling real good myself. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm ready for this conversation. We have an amazing guest. He's doing amazing things. I can't wait to get into that conversation, but I'm good. I'm 432 good.
For sure.
Balanced, peaceful, centered, all of the good things. How about you?
Yeah, I'm right on in alignment with you. Right in alignment with you. Yeah. So yeah, we do have an amazing guest today. We're gonna get into we're gonna have on our special guest, I should say, in about 10 minutes. Is Dr. Matt Harper. Yes, he is he's a professor of African American and African Studies at Mercer University, and he's an amazing person. He has a lot going on, and we're excited to have him on here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and and if you didn't know, we are streaming live on visual radio, meaning we are on social media. That means we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube and all the other social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and all that stuff too. But we are an actual radio show. So we are on the radio, y'all. So if you're in the Macon and Middle Georgia area, make sure you turn your radio dial to 107.9 FM, WDDO, and 980 AM. All right, so that's if you're Macon, Warner Robins, Twitts County, Sandersville, Millersville, all them good places around here. You can check in with us on your radio dial. So if you lose your internet service, turn on the radio.
That's right.
If you can't catch us on your radio, if you go out of town or something, you can catch us on the internet. Take us anywhere that you go. So we appreciate this platform. Shout out to our sponsors, Homeland Village, Roscoe Tours, Habersham Records, Assembly Brothers,
Big
Sherm, and that's it. No. And Dr. Chike Akua.
Absolutely. So if you join us at the top of the show and y'all hear that Reading Revolution ad, that is Dr. Chike Akua. He's graced us with his presence here in Macon a few times. And so y'all definitely we appreciate Dr. Chike Akua for all he's doing to increase literacy, improve literacy in our community.
Absolutely. So tell your folks if you're listening right now, hey, look, check in, share the show. Tell your folks this is a show that they don't want to miss. It's gonna be highly enlightening and all of that. So make sure that y'all tune in with us. And so, with that being said, you want to kick us off with the good news, Tia?
I'm gonna start with the good news, and then we'll get into some global news.
Some global.
Yeah,
we're going global now.
We're going global, and it's gonna feed into the conversation, I believe.
Okay.
So we're going to start with what's happening this evening at 7 p.m. The Unspoken Word Open Mic Spoken Word Night at Overtime Bar and Grill will be taking place. This open mic is for poets, storytellers, musicians, and creatives. You do need to be 21 or over in order to enter, but if you have something on your heart that you would love to share, you can get it out this evening at 7 p.m. at Overtime Bar and Grill. On Friday, June 5th, there will be, the 567 Center will be hosting the See the Children art exhibit from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. This exhibit will be open at 456 First Street. It's free admission, and it will be featuring artists including Kevin Sean Lewis, Char Lockett, Tierra Gross, Rhonda Sunshine Miller, Jay White, Keeve, Euphoria Art Block, D Stowe, and Randy H, and many more. The exhibit will remain on display through June 29th. So please be sure to get out. That'll be taking place again on June 5th, this Friday. Some neighborhood meetings that'll be coming up. The Fort Hill Neighborhood Association will be meeting on Tuesday, June 9th at Rosa Jackson Center from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Westside Neighbors United will be meeting at 6 p.m. That's correct, 6 p.m.
Right.
On the same day, June 9th. And then that following Saturday, June 13th, Pleasant Hill Neighborhood Organization will be meeting at Booker T. Washington Community Center from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And then to get into some global news, there was one of the biggest international stories this week came from the Vatican, where Pope Leo XIV issued what many historians are calling the most direct apology ever made by a pope regarding the Catholic Church's role in slavery. In a major document released on May 25th, Pope Leo acknowledged that past popes and the Holy See not only failed to condemn slavery for centuries, but also helped legitimize systems that allow European powers to enslave non-Christian peoples. He described this history as a wound in Christian memory and asked for a pardon on behalf of the church. While previous popes had apologized for the actions of Christians involved in the transatlantic slave trade, historians note that this is the first time a pope has publicly acknowledged and apologized for the institutional role the Vatican itself played in authorizing and legitimizing slavery. The apology has been welcomed by many Black Catholic organizations and leaders around the world as an important step toward truth and reconciliation. At the same time, some advocates say that conversation cannot end with an apology alone and are calling for continued discussions about historical accountability, reparative justice, and the lasting impacts of slavery and colonialism. And so for communities like Macon, I think that having Dr. Matt Harper in here is a good segue to even the Pope's acknowledgement of slavery, because we see so many things that have happened here locally. Macon has such a rich history. And when we're talking about, things like displacement, redlining, segregation of schools and all of those things, and even like the history of Macon's first Black legislature in the Georgia State Legislature, and then how that ended. And we can get into all of that, but how those things connect to the history of the transatlantic slave trade and the Pope's apology, and how do we move forward as a community to reconciliation now that truths are being told. So that is what we have for the news, and hopefully we can segue in and get some insight from Dr. Matt on that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I like to talk a little bit about that real quick, because I love history. That's my favorite thing.
It is.
And I learned something about the discovery doctrine some time ago, right? And that's what the Pope, there were like some papal bulls. I forgot the name of them. Dr. Matt Harper might be able to help me out a little bit, but you can Google it with the discovery doctrine, or the doctrine of discovery. That was like 1450 something, I think, 1451. But anyway,
We're gonna look for it.
yeah. But there, the Pope basically had a decree that said that anyone who didn't practice, who wasn't a Catholic, who wasn't a white Catholic, or who wasn't a white Christian, basically, they were savages, and so therefore, they needed to be refined and reformed for the most part. And so, that doctrine is basically where the Catholic Church, which Tia talked about, allowed for colonizers to come and basically just take land, just because they felt as if the people who were there before didn't deserve it, and they were justified by God, to be able to do that. And so I also had heard about the discovery doctrine in America, which is crazy because they kind of work together. And I learned about how in 1823, which just so happened to be the year that the city of Macon was founded, there was a court called Johnson versus McIntosh. And it is where that's basically how we pay property taxes now. We pay property taxes now because of this court case that most lawyers, most attorneys, from my understanding, when they go to law school, they have to learn this case first before any other thing, they learn about Johnson versus McIntosh. So that's basically what led to like the Trail of Tears, like in the 1830s, and what had the Indian Removal Act and that kind of a thing. But it was a case involving, some settlers, some white settlers being able to take some land, the last piece of land from some Native Americans. And so that so-called discovery doctrine from the Catholic Church also came into law in the United States. And it was 1823 when it was brought into law, which is when Macon was founded, and we removed the Creek Indians from here in Macon, and then we settled, and now we have the city of Macon today. So I just find that interesting how that happened, like the same year, the same time period, and all that. But there's way more to it, but just that mindset of a discovery doctrine, like you so-called discovering something that's already there,
right?
And you're saying that people are savages or what have you. When in actuality, the people that have that mindset, that's more of a savage mindset than the people that are being called savages.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's great that we can be here today, and have these discussions and have them open, and be truthful about these things. This is important. It's important for healing. It's important for unity. It's important for progress, and for us to find solutions to issues, because we can't do it if we're not being truthful, and we're leading with truth and reconciliation. So I'm glad that you brought that today. I'm glad that was good information.
Information. And then just to add some data to what LJ said, so that papal bull was signed by Pope Alexander I believe the 6th in 1493. So that was right after the Moors were conquered.
And Christopher Columbus discovered.
Christopher Columbus,
quote unquote, discovered America in 1492.
Yeah.
So all of that it runs together, and that's why history is important, y'all. I know a lot of times people think that history is not important, or it's not important for what's happening right now, but it's extremely important. Dr. Matt, he's going to explain a little bit more about how some of these things do connect, and his expertise, because he brought some powerful information to a couple of meetings that we went to that we're going to bring up in our conversation.
Right.
And and that was a big motivation for why we even invited him here, because we met him in person and saw the passion with which he speaks to his profession, and we're so thankful to have him here. And you want to get into our accountability check question before we get started?
I can. And so the accountability check question for today is: can a neighborhood truly be preserved if the people who built its culture and history can no longer afford to live there? That question again for our accountability check: can a neighborhood truly be preserved if the people who built its culture and history can no longer afford to live there? So feel free to chime in, y'all. Call in at 478-250-1444, or you can leave your comment in the chat on Facebook or YouTube. We already have some folks in the chat. Want to give a shout out to Jaretta. She says, hey guys, she is joining us on YouTube. We have Miss Commissioner Donis Bryant. She says, hi all. Steve Bryant says, hello everyone from Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve. And Ashley Woodford says, hey Ashley.
Hey.
Thank y'all so much for joining us. And again, if you want to chime in on that accountability check question, you can give us a call at 478-250-1444. LJ, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, or if
Yeah, I guess real quick because I don't want to talk too much about that. You know, I got a lot to say
he
about
got
that.
a lot to say about it. He got a lot to say about a lot of things.
Yeah, but for that one, I ain't gonna try not to talk too much about it, so we can get it to our guests. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it's possible for a neighborhood to truly be preserved if the people who built this culture and history can no longer afford to live there. I mean, because the neighborhood, it is the people. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
a lot of times, people look at community development as in buildings. And the buildings aren't what make up development or make up a people. Like you build people.
Right.
That's how you build a community. That's how community development is supposed to start, where you're building up people, and then from the building up of those people, now we build these buildings and the infrastructure around the people that make up this community, and then these buildings are supposed to reflect the spirit and the nature of the people. And so therefore, if you have people that have built the culture and have built the whole history, they are the history of a particular neighborhood, and now you're saying they can't afford to live there. I mean, obviously there's something that's going on. I mean, when you talk about why can't they afford to live there, like if they've been living there all this time,
Right,
and been able to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, and then all of a sudden what they're getting priced out. So to me that sounds like gentrification, or people coming in and raising up like we talked about the property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The fee simple, that's what that law was called in that court case I talked about, 1823. Where property taxes are being raised, and now where people can't afford to pay the property taxes, or homes are becoming blighted and things of that nature, because the history and the culture is being lost, so people don't even understand the importance. Like future generations, even within those families in those neighborhoods, don't understand how important it is to hold on to the land, or to make sure we don't let mama house and grandmama house and granddaddy house be lost, because we don't understand the importance of our own culture and history. All those things are important, on both ends. So I think that it's very important for us to understand how important our history and culture is, especially when it comes down to how neighborhoods are preserved, because there's a lot of that happening right here in Macon, with a lot of developments that are happening. We talked about this, you and I both. I'm about to be done with this. We've both been talking about how it's important not to just do new builds. Our neighborhood organizations are talking about that, how people are building all these new homes, but what about homes that need renovating, or homes that need repair? Mayor Ellis talked about that last week. We were talking about how we need these homes to be restored and repaired. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that we should definitely preserve the people of we want to preserve the neighborhoods.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to just sum it up with one of our audience members, Kiki G, says the answer is simply no. It cannot be preserved.
maybe I should have used her answer. Good answer, Kiki. Let me be quiet. I'm just too long-winded.
And with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest, Dr. Matt Harper. And if you want to introduce yourself to the people, tell us a little bit about who you are, and even if you want to chime in on anything that we've kind of already discussed, and we'll get into some additional questions after that.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
We appreciate you for being here.
Hey, it's a great place to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Matt Harper. I teach history and African American studies at Mercer here in Macon, and direct the Beloved Community Initiative at Mercer, which we can talk a little bit later. Produce the Refounding Macon videos. And just really great to talk to you about Macon and Black history and all the things I like.
For sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're gonna start off. We have an elephant in the room now. See, we like to talk about things. We straight up in here, yeah. Dr. Matt. You know that. You good people. We wouldn't have you on here if we didn't think you can handle it. But obviously, you teach African and African American studies, right? And you probably get asked this quite often, but of course we have some people to ask us, like, what's this motivation? I think it's rare for people to see a white male or Caucasian, whatever we might want to call ourselves, to be teaching African American studies. And so, what is it that motivated you, or what makes it to what's your passion behind teaching African American studies?
There's a saying that we have in the university sometimes, which is all research is me search. People are trying to figure out something about themselves by digging into the research. And for me, it was that I grew up in integrated schools and segregated churches. And I grew up in my school was well integrated, but the rest of my community wasn't. My parents knew the parents of the other white kids in class, but they didn't know the parents of the black kids in class. And the churches were segregated and the neighborhoods were segregated. And they weren't just segregated, they were stratified. That is, that resources were distributed unevenly. And a 7-year-old could see it. Right. You could just notice, oh, okay, this part of town has sidewalks. This part of town doesn't have sidewalks.
Just move your microphone up a little bit towards you.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
And so I just started asking a lot of questions. Right. Now, I didn't grow up as a kid of the 50s. If I had grown up in the 50s, I think people would have just explained to me white supremacy. But I grew up in the 80s, and we were supposed to be beyond that. So everyone just acted like there wasn't a problem, and I must be seeing things. They'd be like, oh, well, we had problems, but it's all fixed now. It obviously was not fixed. Right. And so I could tell that we were being sorted as kids by race. But nobody was giving me a straight answer about it. And so I started reading. Reading Black history. And not only did that start to explain to me why my community looked the way it did, but I also fell in love with Black history. I found that there was sort of the depths of human despair and human joy right next to each other. I grew up in Christian traditions that I was sort of sealed off from the Black Christian tradition across the tracks, which had a lot of resources for me. There's a lot of beauty and wisdom that I was shut out from, and Black history gave me access to it. So for me, it was a desire to understand my community. I grew up in public schools. Public schools wouldn't exist in the South without Black history. I mean, it's Black people who demanded public schools. There weren't any until Reconstruction, when Black office holders said, we've got to have education for our children. So it's like my life, it's not as if Black history explains the lives of Black communities. Black history explains my life, as a white person living in communities that have been deeply shaped by the contributions of African Americans and by the racist policies and practices that continue to shape their lives and my life. So for me, that was just a really important thing to study. I just kept reading until I got my PhD in Black Studies.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And you grew up in?
I grew up in North Louisiana and East Texas.
So you were in the heart of the South.
Yeah.
You were deep in the South.
Yeah. Though I tell you, I mean, I've been in Macon 12 years. I don't think I've been anywhere as racially stratified as Macon. Right. And I came from places that were racially stratified. So Macon feels like home in the sense that these are the same problems that I noticed as a kid that I still notice in this community.
And out of curiosity, when you say stratified, in what ways? Like, in what ways are you, especially, you not being from here like originally, but you being there now, we claim you now, you here long enough. Yeah, but as far as you seeing, what type of observations have you have you made that made you feel that way?
Yeah, when I say stratified, I mean, so when we often talk about segregation, which makes people think just that things are separate, almost like they're stacked, horizontally. But stratification means these separate worlds are actually stacked vertically, right? Where some people have more power and more resources and more opportunities than other people. It is not as if there's a white side of town and a black side of town and they're the same, right? And so that's what I was noticing. One, I can notice you can easily go around neighborhoods in Macon and you can see the disparity, right? You can also see that it's stratified in the sense that since desegregation, white communities in this town have pulled out of public resources.
Absolutely.
So it started with, public parks, right? We filled public swimming pools with concrete, and we turned public parks into shopping centers rather than desegregate them. Right. The same is true with public housing or public schools or public transportation. It was a couple of years ago that the commissioners pulled funding from the public libraries and the public transportation, and and we had to fight to get those back. This is sort of is that if the public is going to become an integrated space, then white people and the resources that white people control will be withdrawn from those public institutions. That's really, that I can see that clearly as a stratification.
Absolutely.
I grew up in a racially divided community, but my school system was pretty racially integrated. My kids who were growing up in Macon are in a much more racially segregated school system, right, than the one that I grew up in. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. It's two separate things that, like, just listening to you, the fact that you were 7 years old and could visibly notice and understand and see that there is something that is significantly different between the Black community in those neighborhoods and the white community that you grew up in, and to still be gaslit almost like, okay, no, everything is fine, but how do we get under those layers to understand what has happened, and how do we truly rebuild and rectify those things. And then another thing that you just said, that the fact that you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and your children growing up probably in the early 2000s, and are even seeing more racial segregation than you saw. So to me, it sounds like that things are still regressing in a way, especially being in Macon, that you didn't even get to see. And
yeah, I think it's so important that if you don't understand the history behind the stratification that you see, right? The kids see it, right?
Right.
If you haven't been taught that history and you're not curious about it, then you're going to assume that there's a naturalness to it.
Absolutely.
Right? You're going to begin to associate the lack of resources with Black space.
Absolutely.
And then begin to think, well, there must be something wrong with Black people if Black space doesn't have the amenities that I'm used to as a white person. Right?
Absolutely.
And so it's really important for white people, for all people, but to know that the disparities that you see between Black space and white space in the city are not natural.
Right. They were intentionally done.
Right. There's a history there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But without that history, it's easy to make racist assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. And then we're going to go to the comments. So, or to the, we actually have a phone call.
Yeah, we have a phone call. I guess and then we'll get to
the chat, and then we'll get to some more questions. Hey, caller.
Hey, y'all. This is Aisha. Keep making Big Beautiful calling in.
Hey, Miss Aisha, how you doing?
Hey, Aisha.
I'm doing good. I'm actually driving, but I had to call in. I wanted to call in because it was just something that Dr. Harper, and hi, Matt. I've had the pleasure of working with Matt on a couple of occasions. Yes. And so, but I wanted to chime in because it was just interesting, his viewpoint coming from somewhere else to Macon. I've been in Macon the majority of my life, but I moved here in the third grade. I was 8 years old from Patterson, New Jersey. I know you can't tell the Jersey accent anymore. I have the Southern drawl now.
It's gone.
I do remember my first day of school in Macon. Like I said, I was 8 years old in the third grade. And I remember my grandmother picking me up from school and asking me about how did my first day go. And as an 8-year-old, I told her, I said, well, it was different because where I came from in Patterson, New Jersey, I had a very diverse neighborhood and school district. Where I went to school, there were Black kids, there were white kids, but there were also Puerto Rican kids, there were Jewish kids, there were Italians. Like, it was really a melting pot. And but when I came to Macon, the elementary school that I attended was all Black. My neighborhood where we lived was all Black, and that was so different for me as a child coming from where I came from, and the fact that I noticed that at 8 years old, and that was the exact year was 1980. We moved here in 1980, and so I just thought that was interesting from Matt's perspective. Because I just remember as a child also having that same experience, and even in my young mind realizing that, wow, like this is different from where I came from.
Right.
So just wanted to share that though, because it was just very interesting to hear his take on that. And my experience as a child was actually very similar. Moving from Macon I know he moved here as an adult, but I came here as a child, but still had an
Right. But still to
experience
see.
elsewhere
Absolutely.
to have the knowledge as a child to be able to still see that there was a difference.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, somebody in the chat asked, what was the name of the school that you went to?
The
Oh,
elementary
God, I know
school.
it was at that time. There's no shame on the school. It is what it is, but it was Baltsy Pie Elementary School at the time. It's now Ingram Pie, but at that time it was
Okay.
Baltsy Pie. Yes.
Gotcha. Well,
So
Yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, that's what I wanted to share about my experience as far as just coming from another environment, and then to be in Macon now and to be in my 50s, and it's still very very segregated. Probably more so now. At least when I went to middle and high school at that time, believe it or not, graduated from Southwest High School in 1990. My class was basically pretty balanced, basically half and half, black and white. That's not the case now. So we definitely have some issues, some race issues, not just race, but also from a social status. Because in addition to, we've also lost the black middle class when it comes to our public schools as well. So that's something we have to also talk about and address too. It's not just white flight. We've had issues of making as far as black flight when it comes to our middle class.
right. So it's a class issue. Some of these
It's
problems that we
it's
have
a race
too.
issue and a class issue. Yes.
That's right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Aisha, for calling in. We appreciate your comment and joining the conversation. Thank you so much. And then, and I say just for myself, I know I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and for me, although my community that I grew up in, my neighborhood was not diverse. I grew up in a predominantly Black community, and when I went to school, however, once I got out of, so we had a gifted and talented program. And so when I initially started school, so like my first, second, and third grade, I was in predominantly Black schools. But once we got into the gifted and talented program and those shifted for me, I started being around more, Caucasians, more Hispanics, just very diverse community. So I saw a difference in my schooling, and I was able to kind of be around people who were more diverse and had different, upbringings and all of those things. And to come to Macon, and I think that I didn't quite notice it at first until I really started making connections with people in the community and really started being around Macon to see, like, you can literally go 5 minutes up one way and see a complete difference in the community and know that, okay, I'm no longer in, this Black community. Now I'm in this white neighborhood, and then, keep on going. And now I'm Black in the, now I know that I'm back in a Black neighborhood, because like you said, the stratification, you see it, and just the infrastructure and, the way people are the resources are being, split and taken. So I think that is really important. But for people growing up here, it might not be as easily visible, because like you said, they might just have associated, this is a nature, like this is what we are used to, this is what we grew up in, without knowing that history.
All right, for sure.
And you can go to some comments.
Yeah, definitely go to the comments, because we want to get to, I guess, a couple of questions that we have in the comments as well.
Yes.
Yeah, but a couple of comments are Edward James. That's my brother Head.
Yeah. What's
He
going
says,
on?
"Fam, what's going on, fam?" Then one of his comments says, "Yep, now they pushing us out." I think he was responding to the accountability check question, right?
Yes.
Mr. Asia says, "Hey," then she called.
Yes.
Tia, you put a link in the chat.
Yes, that is for just information on the Doctrine of Discovery and the Johnson versus McIntosh.
Gotcha. Edward James says they're using HUD and Newtown to box us out. Miss Asia again says, "Hello, Matt." Miss Deetra Taylor, she says, "Hey, I'm in ATL traffic. Hey, Dr. Harper, go Bears."
Hey, Deidre, we appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. Edward James, he says, that would have been my question. Oh, I think he was in the first question we asked. Yeah, and Kiki G says, I was hoping you guys would address the elephant. Okay,
yes,
for sure. Did. Yeah, Edward James says, private parts, look at Tapman Square. Kiki G, she says, Dr. Harper, I guess this is a question right here.
Yes.
She says, how do you try to make your passion and understanding of African American studies translate to your peers, though?
Yeah. Does she? I wonder if she means my peers as my other scholars or other white people. Yeah. What she means.
Probably both. I would
Both,
say
yeah.
both.
Yeah.
How are you
Yeah. I
doing
mean,
that?
I think the key thing is to let you know that like Black history is American history, right? Like if you every fundamental constitutional crisis that this nation has had has revolved around the rights of Black people.
Right.
Okay. And we often don't even know what rights that we have in a society until they're broken. Most rights are unwritten, unspoken.
Right.
You don't know what they are until they've been broken.
Right.
Well, there's only one people group in the United States who the Supreme Court has said that they have no rights that the white man is bound to respect. And that was the Supreme Court talking about Black people in 1857. Right. And so that is the people who've had their rights violated the most. They're the ones who have to stand up, protest, fight.
Right.
And it's only when they do that that the rights that the rest of us wanted got enumerated, written down, put into the Constitution, made as code. And so many of the rights that we have as Americans only exist because when Black people were denied those rights, they fought back.
Right.
Right. And so trying to help you understand that you don't understand your own rights as a citizen, you don't understand the rights of what it means to be American, the American identity without Black people. It's just Black people have an outsized contribution right to key points in American history. And so I try to get people to know that Black studies is for everybody. Right. It explains all of our world. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And with that being said, when you say Black studies, because I was going to ask you this later, I might as well ask you now myself. How far does your studies go back? Like when you talk about like history, like do you go back like to the origins of humanity? Like you go back just 500 years, 1,000 years? Like how far back do your studies go?
It depends on what class I'm teaching. But yeah, so I teach the Atlantic Slave Trade course for Mercer. So we usually pick that course up in the early 15th century and begin looking at that. I teach another course, which is Global Histories, where I teach world history with Africa at its center. Okay. And for that, we go back to the beginnings of human origins in East Africa. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Outstanding. Okay. All right. So in the chat, we also have and Kiki G, let us know if he answers your question or not. If you feel like he answered the question, let us know in the chat. All right. And Miss Marvelous Poet Ivory says, Dr. Harper, hello. And she asked, okay, we asked that question. She asked. And then we have another question from Commissioner Bryant. She asked, as a historian, who does the history of person of color pertain to? And what would you consider a safer word to use in 2026?
Yeah, this is not really my expertise, but I think person of color is an attempt to try to create common cause among non-white people in the United States who have all had a history of racial exclusion in some form or fashion, right? And often when you say person of color, you're asking different communities to see their common cause, right? One, for example, would be, it wasn't until the civil rights movement, largely led by Black protests in the 1960s, began calling on federal legislation to remove race and racism from those, that our immigration laws changed and let in Asians into the United States for the first time. They had been banned from the 1920s until 1965. It's the civil rights movement that lets Asians come to the United States, right? And so to have Asian Americans and African Americans start to see there's a common history of racial exclusion, and this common history of fighting for greater rights for non-white people has benefited everybody. So it's sort of when you say person of color, you're trying to get people to think in this common cause. There are some dangers to that term, because then it starts to act like every non-white community has experienced the same degree of racial exclusion or suffered the same consequences, and that's simply not the case. Right. There's really strong anti-Black racism in a lot of immigrant communities. Absolutely. Right. And there may be really strong anti-immigrant bias in Black communities. Right. So you can't assume that there's common cause, that there's a shared history. There's a danger if we conflate all of those. But I don't know if that answered her question.
Yeah, you're saying there's some danger in 2026 using the word person of color.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Because even like just recently, there was a young man, 14 years old, who was just I don't know what I want to use, who was just unalived by a store owner who chased him out of the store under the allegation that he had stole a few bottles of water. And it was, I think they were, they're Asian. I don't know what, what subculture or sub ethnic group they are, but things like that, when you're trying to group people all together and you still see like these kind of animosities and this, bigotedness towards, certain groups, whether you're an immigrant group, Black American, Caribbean, whatever it may be. So I think that it's good to try to find, commonalities and common cause amongst people, but you also have to understand people's individual experiences, and you can't minimize that as it relates to, certain certain terms that you want to use for people.
Right. And I guess we can go to Ms. Kiki G. She says, wow, she says she loves that answer to Commissioner Bryant. Says, we're Black though. We can't afford to lump ourselves with people of color because they might have anti-Black traits. She says Cyrus was, she says, murdered by Rick Child.
Yeah, I know it's a gospel show. I didn't know what, but I got you.
I mean, hey, it is what it is. The word is in the Bible too.
That's right.
Yeah. Commissioner Bryant says, bottle of water and they take your life. Yeah, but okay. Let's get into a couple of other questions that we have for Dr. Hart. We need to talk about some of the stuff that he has going on. You have an amazing documentary that we think we're telling all of y'all. We're gonna put it in the chat too. I put it on the promotion or the flyer. But
4-part series.
Yeah, it's a 4-part series that he did. It is amazing. It's called Refounding Macon. And in it, you have like people like Miss Muriel Jackson. She's an amazing historian at the Washington Library. Miss Yolanda Lattimore, our sister. She works at the Tubman now. She's she does a lot for the Linwood Cemetery. She's over the Linwood Cemetery. Oh yeah, of course, Mr. George Muhammad. That's like he's a whole nother Godfather type figure to me as a person. You have Dr. Duval in there, who's an amazing historian from the legendary Duval family. And others, even Mary Jack Ellis in it. You have quite a few folks in it, and yourself in it.
Yes.
And it's so much history in it. Like, you have to watch it more than one time. But can you tell us what inspired you to do that documentary, and what is it that people can expect once they get a chance to to look at it?
Yes. Well, I was really fascinated with Macon's history as soon as I moved here 12 years ago. And even before I moved here, I started discovering that people that I really cared about in Black history were from Macon, and Macon just wasn't on my map. And so I hadn't been paying attention. But I mean, the William and Ellen Craft, whose story is so inspiring, their daring escape from slavery here in Macon. Yeah. And then, someone like Henry Minnill Turner, who's just a giant in Black history and somebody who really inspired me. And I knew that he was working in the Deep South during the 1860s and 70s. I had no idea his headquarters was Macon, right? And so it just started really exciting. Macon has the first elected Black U.S. congressman who speaks on Capitol Hill from this community. It's just like a lot of firsts, really important things in national Black history happened here in Macon. And so I was excited about this. We were working as part of Beloved Community on trying to get majority white, majority Black religious congregations in town to start working together, building friendships, partnerships. And one of the things that the clergy told me is, we don't know our own history. We don't have a shared starting point for these communities. These communities have different explanations for how we got to where we are, and it makes it really hard for us to have productive conversations. We need a common starting point. And so it's actually those clergy and other people in Beloved Community who really pushed me to say, we've got to do this. We've got to do it. And they actually are the ones who spearheaded writing the first grant application for that. we got connected with Jave Bjorkman at And So We Go Productions, who does really good work, and started assembling this wonderful team of local historians, many of them whom LJ just mentioned, and began producing these series. But the whole point was, we need to know this history so that we can start having real conversations across difference in this community.
Right. And I think one of the things that I really liked, especially with the first part, was starting off with Superior Clerk, Court of Clerks Superior. I don't know. How to say
Superior
it.
Court Clerk.
Yeah, there we go. Y'all, my tongue is twisted today. Miss Erica Woodford, because that enslaved people project, I feel like, with people saying that there are so many different histories being told, that was, I feel like, a great starting point to kind of center everything. Like, okay, we don't know the history, but here is where we began with, you know, slavery and building up Macon as a city, and then all of the things that followed, you know, with that. So I think that was a great starting point for me to kind of see, you know, just how everything started from that 1823 starting point to, you know, even our county owned slaves and or enslaved people rather, to, you know, Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, and then all of the, you know, just the history that follows. So I think that it's important, y'all. I put all 4 parts of the Refounding Macon in the chat, so please be sure to check those out at your convenience. And Dr. Matt, because I asked you, I said, how is this information getting shared ahead of the show? Can you speak a little bit to, you know, what your goal is for the community to be educated on that history?
Yeah, we designed these documentaries to be short. They're only 15 minutes each, because we didn't want to release a feature-length film that people watched by themselves in their living room. We wanted these to be short enough that you could show these in groups, like a neighborhood association meeting or a Sunday school class, and you could show it and then discuss it. Right. The point is to get the conversation started. So we wanted, in a given hour that you might have with a group of people, that you could show a 15-minute video and then have a conversation about it. Our goal is to foster real community conversation.
Right. And that's awesome. And then just real quick, we do have a caller on the line. We kind of running out of time. We got about 15 minutes. But caller, are you still there?
Yes.
Hey, you can tell us your name, and then you can share with us what you wanted to share. If you had a question for Dr. Harper, or if you just wanted to answer one of the questions, the accountability check question.
And I know all 3 people. I know Dr. Harper, I know Tia, I know LJ, and I'm adding on to the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can't, just go ahead. Because we have a couple of questions we got to get to with Dr. Harper. So if you can't,
how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Just let us know what's on your mind. Talk to us.
I'm adding on. So my experience with race and race relations is probably a little different than most people may expect. I grew up in Lozella and later in Westminster neighborhood in Macon, where I lived and attended schools with people from many different backgrounds. My family is diverse as well, with African Americans, Caucasians, Hispanics, and my extended family. So I've had the opportunity to build relationships across racial and cultural lines my entire life. So therefore, one of my earliest experiences with racism happened in the 5th grade when another student called me that N-word, and I reacted like a kid would react because I was hurt and angry, but I wrote 2 pages to explain my actions and what happened. So this experience stayed with me because it taught me how powerful words can be and how much work we still have to do to understand one another. So therefore, when I attended my first HBCU, Alabama State University, in the bedrock of civil rights, Montgomery, Alabama, I was in a culture shock. See, although I am African American, but I had grown up in a racially diverse environment. So being immersed in a predominantly Black HBCU environment was really new for me. And it took me some time to acclimate, but I came to appreciate the rich history, culture, and excellence that 4 generations of my family who attended Alabama State got a chance to experience. And in fact, I found out that my great-great-grandmother founded a school for blacks in Northport, Alabama. I appreciate Dr. Matt Harper and all that he does for paired clergy and beloved community to bridge the gap amongst all of us humans, amongst the races, amongst the lines that separate us and show us how much we do have in common. So I want to thank Dr. Matt Harper. I want to thank Tia Lockhart. And I want to thank LJ Malone for all that you do in this beloved, marvelous making community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
right,
We
thank
appreciate we appreciate that. We appreciate it. And I think that the work that's being done is important. And I do want to, LJ, I don't know if you had a question, but I have Kiki G who says, out of curiosity, Dr. Harper, do you find the support you need in Macon or from the Caucasian community?
Yeah, one of the things that really surprised me or excited me in studying Macon's history were all the moments in the past when Maconites came together across racial lines and worked for a real community of justice, right? Whether that was in reimagining what Macon could be after the end of slavery, could we have a society with freedom and equality? You know, there was energy. There was an integrated city council in 1870 in Macon, and then that was crushed by a real strong form of white supremacy that came in and disrupted that.
Right.
But then there was another moment, even in the early desegregation movement, a lot of cooperation by white and black Maconites that were working on desegregating a number of public institutions in town, and then that was co-opted by another movement, Machine Gun Ronnie Thompson, and this sort of So we have had these moments. There are places and spaces which I think Reverend Ivory was just talking about in her experience growing up in a place that felt like there was more opportunity, right? There was more opportunity, diversity for working for a community. I feel like those spaces still exist in Macon. There are still people who care about those, but there are powerful forces that would make that conversation stop and go backwards, right? We're seeing a lot of those powerful forces. It is affecting the work that we do in beloved community, right? We see that those forces are strong, but there are still a lot of people who care about a community of justice and shared humanity that can imagine a city that is less racially stratified, right? Those sources do exist. Sometimes they're being drowned out, or there's a lot of fear. It makes it harder. Yeah.
Right. And you spoke about beloved community. That can you speak to what that is, and is that your organization, your movement that you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's not mine. It's I get the opportunity to convene it or direct it right now, but it was actually it was a joint vision by Dr. John Dunaway and the late Reverend Lonzie Edwards in town, and I just inherited this vision. They themselves inherited the term from Martin Luther King Jr., who got it from somewhere else, right? But this idea that what we're going for is not tolerance. What we're going for is not just an end to hostility. We're imagining something on the other side, which is a community where everyone is invested in the future and well-being of everybody else in the community.
Absolutely.
Even the formerly oppressed and the former oppressor, right, find themselves as brothers and sisters in a new community where they weep over each other's sorrow, triumphs, and there's this sort of shift in each other's future, right? That's what we're sort of looking for, and sort of trying to help people in this city imagine what was a city where everyone in the city is committed to the well-being of everyone else in the city. Yeah.
Right. I like to say this: when you talked about Pleasant Hill, right, and you came to the Pleasant Hill Neighborhood Organization meeting, you said something that stuck out to me when you talked about how you coming from another place and you coming to Macon. You felt as if Macon has a richer history or richer Black history than just about anywhere in the United States. That's how you felt, right? And I really feel the same way through my knowledge of history. But you talked about how even the history that we have in Macon, the Black history, and of course how there's an opportunity even for economic development to even be centered around this history, and even how you went to like Jefferson Lawn Park. You said you were surprised that you didn't even see a statue of Jefferson Long,
Right.
you know, or see certain things, you know, about even Bishop Henry and Neil Turner and other figures. So can you speak to that, and why do you feel like Macon, and we only have about 5 minutes left, but can you speak as to why do you feel like Macon has such a rich Black history?
Yeah, I mean, so the Black community in Macon were really politically active, really economically active, culturally really fertile. I mean, the musicians and the church musicians that are produced out of Macon that fundamentally change American music. The first Black U.S. congressman to speak from Capitol Hill, right? There are so many things that happened here, so many rich communities, rich neighborhoods. If you're thinking about Pleasant Hill, or you're thinking about the Black business district that was on Cotton Avenue, or the other Black business district that was on Broadway, or which is now Martin Luther King, and where it's just really remarkable what the Black community did in Macon. And you could get a U.S. history textbook anywhere in the world, not anywhere in the U.S., not from Georgia, and you would likely find some Maconites in that textbook, right? Someone like William and Ellen Craft are likely to be in that textbook. Henry Neal Turner, who was a Black church organizer and political organizer in Macon, who was extremely important, right? But if you drive around Macon and you look at the statues of the people in Macon, it's not the people who are in those textbooks around the country, right? The most historically significant people in Macon are not featured. Right. There's not a museum. There's not. And so I was excited about this history, but then surprised that Macon isn't selling itself. Right. We could sell ourselves. Right. We're selling our music history already. And then we get a lot of tourism at it. We got highlighted in the New York Times as one of the top 40 places in the country to visit, a lot based on that. But our Black history writ large is a huge selling point. Right. It's something that distinguishes Macon in the nation, and I think would be a real draw for tourism, for economic development, for community pride.
Absolutely. Right. And I like to ask you this too, because real quick, and I know it's hard to have this conversation quickly, but you know, Macon is the most redlined city in America, right? And it's a hard conversation to have a lot of times in Macon, because you know, I mean, because I see the word, you know, not only is the Black community a lot of times not educated very well, but even the white community is not educated that well on a lot of these things. And when you see like how Macon is the most redlined city in America and how that's contributed to, first let me just ask you this, in a nutshell, do you see how historical things like redlining has still plays a part in what's happening in Macon today?
Yeah, I mean, you can drive around the city. You can look at the streets and the neighborhoods and the sort of what Tia was just saying earlier, how you quickly drive from one community with resources to another community without resources, right? There's a history to that, right? There's probably a historical map for that, where those neighborhoods were drawn on maps and where decisions were made about resources are available to people on this side of the line and not to people on the other side of the line. Those are not natural boundaries. Those are ones that were imposed by policies, right? You can see that, and it's where we've starved certain parts of the city from resources and given parts to the other. I think when you that history is complex, you've got to take some time to understand it. But when you do, I think you realize that racism didn't just negatively affect Macon's Black community; it's affected Macon as a whole.
Absolutely,
right? Like when I don't think there's any doubt that there is a clear coordinate, because redlining means that you're denying people access to capital, right? The fact that Macon was the most redlined city means more than any other city in the U.S., huge parts of our city were denied access to capital. Is there any wonder that we're dealing with a poverty problem? Right. Is there any, and then the same is true with like racism means our disinvestment in public institutions like public schools.
Absolutely.
Do you think having public schools that are starving for resources and are racially segregated, do you think that makes us attractive to people and businesses that want to move into the area? We collectively are suffering the consequences of racism.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank Dr. Matt Harper so much for joining us this evening. We want to thank you to everyone in the audience who listened in, everyone who called in, who commented. We appreciate you. Please go back and listen or watch Refound in Macon. The symposium for the beloved community will be happening probably later on this year, in October, and keep at just building, growing together, moving in love and compassion, and have the conversations, the hard conversations that are needed for us to move forward in a way
Sure.
that makes all of Making better, not just parts of it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you, Dr. Harper, like greatly. And we ask y'all to just check back in with us next week for another episode of
Village Talks. Peace.
Some blessings, y'all.
You've been listening to Village Talks with Tia and LJ. Join them live every Wednesday from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. right here on the Glory 107.9 FM, 980 AM, WDDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
Connecting the community through gospel. The new 107.9 FM. The community through gospel. The new 107.9 FM. W30.